If you're clicking on this video to watch a man over the age of 7 years old complain about the new Snow White movie, then you clicked on the right video. But if you've been binging videos all weekend long about this new Snow White movie commenting, go woke or go broke, they should have made Snow White white, you're a loser. This video is not for you, and you should go out and fix whatever you need to fix in your life, man. I like actually talking about movies because I actually like movies, and trust me, I think this entire collection of soulless Disney live action movies is the reason this entire studio and every studio within the company is just going downhill from here. But I at least talk about the movie after I actually see the movie, because the amount of 38-year-old men who have been making videos about Snow White is so woke it's gonna ruin my childhood while sitting in front of shelves of toys is flat out embarrassing. It's gotten to the point where somebody like this has the audacity to judge what somebody looks like. And I get it, because if I was a Cowboys fan, the only thing I'd be able to find joy in is judging a 23-year-old's eyebrows. And let's be real, the only people that have the right to complain if Snow White was ruined with this remake is 7-year-old girls. And I don't make content for kids, so if you are a kid and you're watching videos like this, get off the channel, go play Fortnite, go outside, go do something. And for everybody else who is already commenting, oh my god, this guy's such a simp for Rachel Zegler, the devil of Hollywood, I have seen dozens of videos calling Rachel Zegler the worst, feminist bitch, all this kind of stuff, just because she said that Snow White, a movie that was made about 100 years ago at this point, is a little outdated, because in that movie, the love of her life is like a stalker and he just shows up at the end. It is a little outdated. But all of those channels that are ripping her apart for saying that are the same people that go, oh my god, James Gunn should never have been canceled. He's a great filmmaker and he should have been able to make Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Superman this entire time. They're literally jerking off the guy that said he wants to fuck little kids. It's truly insane, especially when you actually see the movie and there's not anything remotely political in the new Snow White. It's crazy. You know what the whole theme of the movie is? It's not, God, white men suck, women should rule the world. It's got nothing to do with that. The message is literally, hey, why don't we all just be nice to each other? Why don't you remember somebody's name? That's the only thing the movie's about. And the fact that this actress has offended so many people years before the movie has come out just for being a little bit quirky is weird. It's truly one of the most bizarre pre-release discussions I have seen around a movie in my entire life. It's ridiculous. And yeah, Rachel Zegler's comments didn't offend me, but the one thing that does offend me more than anything else on this planet is wasting my time. And the new Snow White, along with pretty much every other live action Disney remake, has done that. And not only does it waste my time, it's a waste of your time, Disney's money, Disney's influence, Disney's creativity. And maybe from the intro, you might have assumed like, oh, this guy was so excited for the new Snow White. No, it looked horrendous. And I come from the perspective that Snow White is a pretty underappreciated movie in terms of everybody walking on this damn planet. Because if we were making a list of the top 10 most influential films ever made, I think Snow White's in the conversation of the top 3. Cartoons and animated films would not exist if it weren't for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The newspapers at the time were calling Walt Disney fucking crazy because he truly believed that people would pay money to see a cartoon that was longer than 5 minutes. And he bet his entire career and his entire company on one film. And it was so innovative, and it is still to this day one of the most successful films of all time. If we adjusted ticket prices back then to today's pricing, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is still the most popular animated film of all time. It's in the top 10 highest grossing films of all time with inflation. It is a huge deal of a movie. There is an old YouTube channel called 100 Years of Cinema that was a fantastic channel. I wish that guy was still making content. I hope he's okay, but I'll link the video he did on Snow White years ago. It's one of my favorite videos on YouTube, honestly. Definitely recommend checking it out at some point. But regardless, even take Disney out of the picture. If you grew up watching any sort of cartoon that you enjoyed, you have Walt Disney and Snow White to thank for that. It literally put Disney on the map, and now it's so funny that the remake is making the stock price of Disney just plummet to the ground. And look, I'm not a parent, but if you are, I would love to hear from you in the comments section if your kids actually prefer the live action remakes of these Disney movies, because I would truly be shocked if any kids out there would watch the new photorealistic Lion King over the original original cartoon. I just can't imagine any kids preferring the new one. These live action remakes are just so soulless from start to finish. And even when you get an acclaimed director like Mark Webb, who I forgot was even the director until about 48 hours ago. And he's a good director. Like, I really like 500 Days of Summer. I like the two Amazing Spider-Man movies. The guy has some talent and has proved he can work with a big IP. But these talented directors are just forced into this weird version of corporate filmmaking that it just feels like it has no purpose other than to cash in on a name that you know about from your childhood. And to the credit of the new Snow White, it is one of the few remakes that is actually an adaptation. Like, if you go back and watch The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, they're just trying to recreate the story pretty much frame for frame with the new technology. And the first 15 minutes of the new Snow White aren't great by any means, but as we are sitting there getting the information of Snow White's childhood and how the evil queen rose to power, I wasn't sitting there like, God, this is the worst movie of the year. I was sitting there like, you know what? This isn't that bad. They're actually trying to build on the foundation of the original story. It was far from good, but like going into this movie, I really expected to see one of the worst movies of the year. And even though it ended up kind of being that, they kind of got me in the beginning. I was like, okay, this is going to end up being fine. Like, give me the first 15 minutes of Snow White over the entirety of the Borderlands movie any day of the week. But as the movie continues to unfold, it just gets more dull, adds more bad actors, and just has a pace that is unbelievable. I rarely ever go to the bathroom when I go to the movies. I want to say every 15 movies I see in the theater, I stop for a quick bathroom break in the middle of it. But in a situation like this, where the movie is bad, I know the story of Snow White, I go, okay, I could take a minute and a half pee break. That's fine. Because in my head, I was like, this movie has to be like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I've been sitting here for like an hour and a half at least. And then I check my phone and 50 minutes passed. Turns out the whole movie is an hour and 40 minutes. And it felt like I was there for 3 already. The movie just felt like it wouldn't end. And honestly, the only thing that stopped Snow White from drowning to death is Rachel Zegler's performance. This girl is clearly super talented. She sings her ass off in every single scene that she's able to. And I always thought she was like a pretty good actress, like based off that Hunger Games movie and West Side Story. Like, clearly she's, I think, a better singer than an actress, but she's still like a good actress. But when you put somebody like that in a movie as bad as Snow White, it really makes you go like, oh shit, I am really underestimating how good Rachel Zegler is, because she's the only good thing in this movie. And I wouldn't say she's on the level of like Cynthia Erivo or Ariana Grande in Wicked. You know, like, she's undeniably really good. I wouldn't go as far to say she's like incredible in this, but she is really good in a movie where everything else is really bad. And that really gets amplified when you see her interact with any other human being on screen. Everybody on social media is already ripping into how bad Gal Gadot's performance is. And in the beginning, I didn't think it was awful. From the first scene, I was like, okay, like, she's fine. She kind of looks like the evil queen. I felt like it was fine enough. It wasn't offensively bad until she started singing. And then you go, okay, maybe they should have cast a stick instead. It is brutal to listen to. It's a mix of the worst singing you've heard since the last kindergarten school play that you had to attend, or it's the most obvious terrible auto-tune in the history of cinema. It is truly atrocious, but it doesn't end with her. Like, everyone else in the movie is bad. Even characters like the huntsman, who are in the movie for like 5 minutes, are so bad. The poor guy probably gives the worst 5 minutes of acting he will ever give. And that's either because he will act in other things or he will never get work again based off this. And then you have the prince named Jonathan. And it's so funny because the whole movie is filled with people named Snow White, Dopey, Quig, who the fuck was Quig? Maple. And then you just got this guy named Jonathan. And it just sounds so dumb every time they mention his name. Like, even in the old hag scene, which in its own right is super disappointing. Like, how can you possibly mess up the character design that scarred every kid that was forced to sit through Snow White as a child? It makes no sense to me. But in the live action scene, Krusty Godot is sitting there like, Jonathan told me to give you this necklace. And it's just awful. And you have Jonathan dressed up like he's about to clock in to work at It's a Small World. You would think a movie that costs $250 $50 million would have some decent costume design for a Disney princess movie. But Snow White has a necklace that looks like it was bought from some college girl's Etsy store. And when you combine all of these elements with performances that are just so bad, you are stuck with a movie that cannot in any way be treated seriously. It's everything. Like when the Jonathan character goes up to Snow White after she bites the apple, he literally goes like, "I'm so sorry," in like a baby voice kind of way. It's like, come on, Mark, there wasn't one better take on set. This is crazy. And then you have the 7 CGI dwarves, who in terms of comedic value, they're fine. I think in the entire movie, there was one line that made me go like, and that was that. That was done. That's the end of the comedy. The effect work on them is truly terrible. Like they look like something I would be terrified to find in my closet when I was 8 years old. I know Disney just wants to recreate these things from our childhood, but maybe they were animated for a reason and they just feel like this weird combination. Like people in Disney were debating like, should we make the dwarves feel real? Should we make them feel like too cartoonish? And then at the end of the day, they're like, I don't know. Let's try and do a little bit of both. And it just looks bad. They look like they belong in a horrible AI trailer where it's like, oh, we recreated Snow White in live action. Except that would take about 3 seconds of work for somebody to type in as a prompt for AI. Disney spent real time, money, and resources on creating these CGI dwarves, and they look awful. And on top of all of this, there are a lot of new songs being added to this new version of a musical. Even though Snow White, the original, had like, what, 2 songs that maybe people know about? And then every new song will play and you're like, okay, that was fine. And then you forget about it 2 seconds later. The only notable one is Hi Ho, but everyone in America knows about that song already. And apparently Mandy Moore was the choreographer of this. If you don't know her work, she was behind La La Land, Babylon, the Eras Tour with Taylor Swift. The woman is seriously a professional. There is nobody more qualified to choreograph a big time Hollywood musical. And when people like that are super talented and you can't really see their talent behind the Disney live action cheap Hollywood slop, it's a problem. And look, at the end of the day, is this the worst of the Disney remakes? I mean, maybe. I can't really say because I've skipped a lot of them. Like, I just don't care. The ones like Pinocchio and Mulan that people have shit on already, I'm not gonna waste my time with. I've also missed the ones people said were okay, like Aladdin, Cruella, Cinderella. I've heard decent things about that one at least. Haven't seen it. The 3 remakes I've seen and said like, oh yeah, they're pretty good are Jungle Book, Christopher Robin, and Pete's Dragon. Like anything after that is pretty bad. And I just don't think Disney has pulled off creating anything that feels timeless in this entire slew of live action remakes like they did 100 years ago. Because in the year 2125, is anybody going to be talking about this new Snow White? No. Maybe there's a chance they're still talking about the original Snow White if Disney doesn't run itself into the ground with making bad decisions like this. But if I was a parent, I personally would save money on this one. There's going to be other movies that come out in the theater that you could take your kids to, and just wait for this to come on Disney Plus. It's not worth going to the theater for. And look, at the end of the day, was the new Snow White terrible? Absolutely. Was it a better version than whatever Daily Wire Plus was going to put out? Yeah, probably.